Hello, my name's Rob and I work for the 565 service at St Elizabeth Hospice. The 565 service offers emotional support to children, young people and families affected by progressive illness. Our support continues on after a loved one has died into bereavement care. And I'm here today with some of my colleagues to talk about some of the books that we found useful with our own families to talk about loss. My son is 4 years old and his grandma died before he was born. As such, his understanding of what death and dying means is informed by the stories we tell and the memories we share of grandma. One of the books that I found useful in talking to him about loss and about his grandma is called The Invisible String. The Invisible String is a story about a mum explaining to her children about how we are all connected by an invisible string and that this string doesn't go away even after someone has died. We quite often read this story when he's all snuggled up and ready to go to sleep, and it's quite a nice, calming, well-paced story which explains being connected in a really good way. I love this story because it is such a simple way to explain what loving relationships feel like and how they continue after someone has died. My son loves the story because it's about journeys into space, under the sea, and even into heaven, and it has beautiful illustrations all the way through. The Invisible String has helped my son to understand that we can still talk about grandma even though that she's no longer here. It has also helped him prepare for school, where many children find it difficult to be separate from their families. Next, you will meet my colleagues Espe and Catherine, who will talk about books that they have read with their children that have helped them to talk about loss.
Hello, my name is Espe. I'm a creative counsellor at St Elizabeth Hospice. And today I'm going to talk about a book that has helped me to speak with my daughter about loss. So my daughter was 3 years old when my dad died. Because of her age and the circumstances that he was in Spain and she was here, it was quite difficult for her to process his death. And so I got a few months after my dad died, I got a book that is called Abuelo, ¿dónde estás? Which means Grandpa, where are you? And it has helped us to talk about loss and to talk about death. It has connected us with our own pain, and we share quite a few tears together. And it has opened up a conversation about death. It has normalized talking about loss. And she loves the book because it's quite a funny little boy looking for granddad in a home and looked for him even inside the toilet. So that my daughter find that very, very funny. For me, what I like is that we talk, open up a conversation with my daughter about our pain and process and loss, and connected us. She's now 7 years old and she's still reading it. And the other day came with the book and said, Mommy, let's talk about Abuelo. And she read the book. So it has opened up that conversation of loss and death with my daughter. So I highly recommend it. Thank you.
Hello, my name's Catherine. I'm one of the counsellors within the emotional wellbeing team at St Elizabeth Hospice. And the book that I would like to talk about is this book. It's called The Fault in Our Stars, written by somebody called John Green. And this is essentially, it's a teenage book, and it's essentially a love story between two young people, Hazel and Augustus, both of whom have different sorts of cancers. If you either have a teenager or you are a teenager who's not very keen on reading, it's also been made into a film, which sticks pretty closely to the book, if that's a better way of accessing the story. My daughter read it, has read it a few times since she was about 14. There wasn't a particular trigger for her deciding to read it. She found it, and she had had a significant bereavement a few years before that. She likes it, and she liked it at the time for the style of writing. John Green manages to have quite an authentic teenage voice, which she was able to recognise and identify with. She liked that the story was realistic, so that there wasn't a grand adventure or a romanticised account. It was quite an honest account of living with illness and death. And she liked the idea that it introduces the concept that young people can die, because her experiences have been that older people and adults die, and this was an introduction to that idea. There are quite a lot of themes within the book that she identified with, about protecting parents, feeling different, and one of the things she said was that for any teenager who feels different for some reason, whether that might be through illness or bereavement or other reasons, that it's quite an easy book to identify with the characters and to recognise yourself in. Well, I suppose for myself, I liked how the author interweaves kind of other important themes for teenagers. So there are themes of falling in love, of making relationships, friendships, relationships with parents, emerging sexuality, and that's all interwoven with living with illness and managing grief. And for us in our conversations, we had some interesting conversations about existential questions, really, about life, about love, oblivion, the need to be remembered. And even though it's a tragic book, it's not romanticized in any way. It faces those issues really head on, and it's ultimately a hopeful book and inspires thoughts about meaning and what it is to live